What's up, everyone? I'm Ryan Mayer, and I want to welcome you to the More Than ADHD Podcast, episode 15. Today, we're talking about leadership, integrity, and alignment. And that's why I'm so glad to have one of my favorite coaches in the entire world here with us today to talk about exactly this topic. So, Gary, I would love to just have you introduce yourself to the More Than ADHD audience and let them know a little bit about you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Gary Montalvo. I am a leadership and business coach. I have been supporting entrepreneurs, grow their business, get their passion out into the world, create structures and processes, and really get focused on their mission. And for almost 20 years now, I live in South Florida. I'm originally from New York. I've got two mixed breed dogs that are 70 pounds now and keep me really busy.
I love it. Well, and one of the reasons why I chose to have Gary on the show was because he, first of all, had me on his podcast. So I'm
Right.
excited to have the audience hear more about that later on. But from that, that's where Gary and I first got connected and have stayed connected. And what I'm so grateful for with him is that Gary was willing to trust me and take the leap to go to an event that one of our mutual friends now, Coach Stuart Cohen, and I co-created. That was a coaching retreat. And Gary just said, you know what? I'm not quite sure what we're getting into, but if Ryan says it's going to be good, I'll do it. And the group that came together there was just magical, is really the only way I can describe it. And Gary gave a talk that just kind of like blew the roof off the place, in my humble opinion, that I was just taking all these notes and I'm like, why doesn't anyone talk about this more?
Mm.
Just talking about like integrity and alignment and what does that mean exactly? And speaking of alignment, everything that Gary works on is very much in alignment with what my team and I do at Ryan Mayer Coaching, where we're helping business leaders and professionals, especially with ADHD, to be able to navigate through the storms and creating, as he mentioned earlier, systems that can help those of us who are driven. We have goals, we have a vision bigger than most people do. And we can, like I was just on a call a little bit ago with a client, he's doing these huge things and it's just the little details that can trip us up.
Mm.
So what we both do as coaches is help to equip our clients to be their best selves, to show up as their best self every day for their clients and families. So anyway, we're so glad everyone's here and watching. If you are just tuning in for the first time, make sure you subscribe. Make sure that you're liking this and sharing this with any other leaders that you know who would benefit. But yeah, Gary, I'm just wondering if you could tell the audience a little bit more about your journey, what led you into coaching,
Yeah.
and what that has to do with ADHD.
So my first career actually was in graphic design. I went to the School of Visual Arts and I graduated with a bachelor in graphic designs and immediately started working at Sony Music, designing records, CD levels, not that old, CDs, and then went to theater. And the interesting thing is, I think, so I recently diagnosed. I've only really been diagnosed this year, so I'm 47 years old. And I've suspected it most of my life, but
Sure.
because I think I went to art school, it got masked. Because when you're in art school, you're expected to, it's kind of understood that you're
Yeah.
not going to be super focused and academic and like, your talents are other talents, right? And so I wasn't like having to read all this stuff. I had to stay up and design things, right? Which was allowed me to hyper focus and allowed me to produce really great stuff because I had a really deep passion for it. I did that for a few years and I kept struggling, not in the work that I was doing, but in the experience that I was having. Like I just
Ooh.
always felt, I'll give you an example. I am 22 years old at Sony Music, huge building, Madison Avenue, like 29th floor office, like, and I'm having to give direction to people that are twice my age. And I'm having to go walk into photo shoots and figure out how to navigate those the interpersonal stuff, right? And so I kept changing jobs thinking that, oh, in a different place it'll be better, in a different place will be better. And then eventually I realized that I had to start working on my leadership and the experience that I have of myself that
Yeah.
allows me to walk into these spaces and feel confident and feel, and again, like I was on the surface, I was getting it done, but underneath the surface, like it's like, the duck underwater analogy, right?
Yeah, where
I'm
it looks calm on the top,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
just under the surface, it's just going wild. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So I started to look, I started therapy. I started looking for, then I got into coaching programs where I started to learn about leadership and eventually like completely fell in love with coaching. I had the gift of being able to go back after I graduated from that leadership program to kind of just give it back to somebody else, mentor somebody else. And I just like a switch went off, right? I
Yes.
was like, oh, wait a minute. I can have a conversation with somebody and the trajectory of their life changes forever. Oh no, like this is what I would like.
I'm in.
This is it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so then I was doing it for fun at first. I was just like hanging out. That company offered me a job, a part-time job, and I said, yeah, I want to hang out here. And within a year, I was like running, some of their leadership programs. I grew really fast. I had real nice talent for it, a good talent for it. Natural talent is the word that I'm looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
And then yeah, that's kind of how I got started, and little that's how I ended up as a coach.
It's incredible. And as you were talking about how you were showing up, and what you were feeling on the inside, I have a friend who we'll have on the podcast at some point, Latanya Wilkins, but she has a business called Lead Below the Surface,
Uh-huh.
and she has a book by that same title. And it's so true that for a lot of, I'm going to say, professionals or really anyone, ADHD or not, a lot of times people will put on this exterior for others to see when there's a lot of struggle happening internally.
Yeah.
What was it for you when you could tell that it wasn't like, because I just want to hear more about like when it was calm on the surface, but you were struggling internally. Like what was it that you felt that was out of alignment for you?
Yeah. It felt like I was really intimidated. I felt like I was not good enough. It felt like I was like other people seemed to be working less harder than I was to get
Yeah.
something done.
Yes. Oh my
And
gosh, I
so
experienced that. Yeah.
that made me feel like what, like I'm having to I'm busting my butt here to deliver what other people, at least on the surface, seem to deliver with much more ease. And so I think that also made me feel insecure,
Mm-hmm.
and not grounded, and like it was just a struggle to feel confident, like I belonged in the space, like I belonged in the room. I think is when I look back, that's how I would describe it.
We were just talking a couple minutes ago about being below the surface, and I remember I wrote this blog post that was about that exact thing. Looking around me in every workplace I had been in the corporate setting, and it just looked like to your point, the appearance, that it was so much easier for everyone else. I knew that there was, and I'm wondering if you had this too, like I knew there was moments where I would shine and it was obvious that I had a skill set that was unique, but the problem was that wasn't the majority of the job,
Mm-hmm.
because I was in a sales role for most of my career. And so I was so good at the time where I'm in front of the clients or I'm giving the presentation. But then anytime when it came to the follow up, that's where I really struggled.
Mm-hmm.
But hearing you say that, like the imposter, the insecurity, not feeling like you belong. I would love to have anyone who's listening comment below if you're watching the video and just say if that's something you can relate with, where you feel like you're out of place. And if so, just know you're not alone.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to acknowledge too is that when your brain works differently, you've been getting messages all your life that something's off, that you're not doing it right, that you need to focus more, that you need to, like, so I think by the time I went out into the workforce, I had a whole history of experiences that were these little messages were coming through. And I wasn't aware of it at the time. It was something that I had to do some work to reflect on and look at, but I think that was also part of what was in the background there. It's just, we're always getting these little messages that tell us like, hey, you're doing it wrong, you should do it this way, or you know
Yeah, and I've heard the statistic something like by the time someone who is neurodivergent like we are, by the time they are 8 years old, they've heard negative feedback something like 20,000 times, which
yeah.
is dramatically more than we'll say like a typical child. And it is hard to walk that journey. I mean, Gary shared a little bit ago that he got his diagnosis at 47, and I was in high school when I got mine. If you're listening to this and you're have that question in your mind, do I have ADHD? I always like to mention ADHD Online. We've partnered with them, and they do a phenomenal job of making it ADHD friendly to get a diagnosis in under a week. So if you're seeking more answers and you deserve to know the answers so you don't have to wonder, just go to ADHD Online and use discount code Coach Ryan 50 to get $50 off. We don't want money to stand in the way. Um, just as you were mentioning that, Gary, that's what it made me think of them. So you start coaching, you're at this organization, you're running some of the leadership things. Did the imposter syndrome start to sort of fade away, or what happened from there?
That's really interesting you said that. I think that in some cases, yes, because I felt free in a way that I hadn't felt free before. I had a passion for what I was doing. And I mean, I think there were certainly times where the ADHD showed up. But this is when I started to use leadership distinctions to train me in my ADHD, because I still didn't really know what it was. I just thought that I was a very, like in personality profiles, I thought I was like,
Quirky and
the
creative.
outgoing, the
Yeah.
creative, the,
Yeah.
the energetic one that never
Yeah.
shuts up, that type of stuff, right? So I just like put myself in that box, and that explained it. But what I think, when I was in this place, I started to really feel like myself, and
Hmm.
and these distinctions that I was learning that really started to change my mindset and give me power over how to manage my quirky brain, in ways that I didn't understand before. Because I think up until that point, I was probably judging myself and making myself wrong for the differences. But when I
Hmm.
started to get leadership training and coaching training, I started to embrace it and go, oh, okay, my brain works this way. How do I work with this?
Yes.
Right? What do I need to do? What system do I need to put in place to manage this? And it was as simple as like, okay, oh, I double booked myself in my calendar. Okay. So I'm really committed to keeping my word, because that is a key distinction of being a leader. So I'm
Hmm.
really committed to being in integrity with myself and keeping my word. So what do I need to put in place now so that doesn't happen? Okay.
Hmm.
New rule. From now on, you never say yes to anything without looking at your calendar.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you never say yes to anything without looking at your calendar. And it just became the rule. In the same way that brushing my teeth, in the morning when I get up, it's like a rule, right? Like for most of us, that's not like I would never not do that, or I would never leave the house without brushing my teeth. Same way, I made a rule. I will never say yes without looking at my calendar. And so that those types of rules help me stay in productive, I guess,
Yeah.
and manage the breakdowns.
And so would something like that rule, never say yes before checking my calendar, is that what you would consider one of these distinctions? Because I I want to make sure that I understand and that the audience understands. What do you consider a leadership distinction?
Yeah. So a leadership distinction is like a leadership concept, a point of view. So concepts like responsibility, commitment, vision, integrity. Integrity is a really big one, right? The idea of, and when people hear integrity, they think of it in terms of character or morality, right? Good or bad. And that's not what it means in terms of leadership. It's really the state of whole and complete, something being whole and complete. So in this case, we're talking about your word being whole and complete. And so that means that you're not giving your word out and it's just, not falling apart, right? That when you say you're going to do something, it happens, or you immediately take responsibility for whatever the outcome of you not doing it is. And I think that's where people start to get this wrong. They, especially my ADHD people, they go, "Oh, I forgot to do that." Okay, and then they just move on. But it's like, no, I forgot to do that, and now I have to deal with the impact of what I forgot to do, right? And
Right.
that means I have to reflect, I have to acknowledge it, I have to come up with a strategy for next time. No judgment, no make wrong, but like, how am I going to handle the impact of that breakdown? And so when you look at it from a leadership perspective, you're always looking at it from, how do I handle the impact of my lack of integrity? And that come from allowed me to always look at, okay, well, what's another rule? Okay, I showed up late. Okay, so now I get to be 30 minutes early whenever something important, right? When I am giving a presentation, I have to arrive the night before so that I can be rested and ready to go. Like, I'm not getting off the plane and talking in an hour. That doesn't work for me,
I
right?
love that.
Uh,
Yeah.
Um, but there are all these little rules that I've created along the way because of breakdown happened. And then from that breakdown, I went through the process of reflecting, taking ownership, taking responsibility, and then implementing a rule that would allow me to carry out my commitment the next time. And if we just do that every time, I feel like it gets transformed. But when we don't integrate the lessons of the breakdowns, then we repeat them.
Yes.
And that's really what we go wrong. We don't integrate them. The breakdown happens, and then you just go, oh well, I didn't do it. My favorite one with entrepreneurs: oh, I didn't do my follow-up, or I didn't do my sales call because something came up. Okay, but now you're still accountable for that. So when
Yes.
is that going to happen? How does that get rescheduled? When we don't do that, because here's what happens too: we weasel out of the things that scare us, and
Mm-hmm.
we start to use our ADHD as an excuse for not being responsible for doing the scary things.
Yes.
and
100%.
and we got to cut that out, because just because we have brains that work differently does not mean we don't get to be accountable
Exactly.
for keeping a calendar, for planning, for learning finances. It might take us a little longer. We might need extra support. We might need to invest in coaches. We might need to invest in something, but you get to also be responsible for it to make sure that you get there.
And this is just so good. And just like when we had gone to this retreat in Denver, I was taking a ton of notes then, just like I am now. And a couple of things that you said, giving you the power over that negative self talk by working with your traits. So whether it's good or bad, just looking at it from a neutral perspective and just like I tell my clients, radical acceptance. Like, okay, you may not be thrilled that this is how it is, but it's probably not going to change. So then I love this about you create these rules by the mistakes, which is then an opportunity to learn and do it differently, reflect, adjust, and then the key, like you said, integrating. And the word I wrote down and underlined was expectations. So
Mm.
this is to me, one of the most powerful lessons in the conversation so far is those of us who are leaders or just have different special gifts. We can't expect to be held to a different standard just because of the way that we see the world or experience the world. Like I always will tell my clients, duties as assigned. So like the job is still the same. The
Mm-hmm.
goals are still the same. We might need to figure out a little bit of a creative way to get there. But to your point, Gary, this isn't an excuse. It's just a consideration of like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Do you work on these kind of things with the leaders, like for running a business with ADHD? What are your tips for people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been talking about it, right? And
Yeah.
it's absolutely, look, here's the bottom line. We human beings, we will weasel out of whatever. We will
Yeah.
weasel. We're criminals.
Yeah.
Like we will try to avoid the things that we don't like, the things that scare us. And then what happens is when we have these breakdowns, Ryan, we're not dealing with how do I handle the impact. We start now dealing with how I feel about the breakdown.
Yes.
What my judgment, let me beat myself up over the breakdown. Let me feel bad. Let me blame myself. Let me blame others. None of which makes a difference. None of which will actually empower you in whatever it was you were trying to do. That's just the ego continuing to distract you and by not handling the breakdown, right? So a lot of what I do is supporting people, because what happens when you start a business is you start a business because you have a passion, you have a talent, you have a skill set, and you go, okay, I'm gonna go. I love coaching. I'm a good coach. I'm gonna go open up a coaching practice. I'm gonna go work with people. Great. You get in the game, and then you realize that 10% of what you actually do in the business is coaching people. The other 90% is the marketing, the operations, the finance, the social media, the and then you go, okay, I hired a VA. Great. Well, great. Now you have to learn how to manage a VA. Now you have to learn how to hold a VA accountable. Now you have to learn how to train a VA. Like there is so much that really goes in that has nothing to do with the reason you went into the business in the first place. But what happens is, for most of us, that's confronting. Sales is one of the most confronting
Oh my
things on
gosh.
the
Yeah.
planet for people. You had an advantage because you came from sales, so you had sales training when you got in the game. But for most of us, we didn't have that. So I had to learn how to have a sales conversations without wanting to like run out of the room.
Yeah.
Those are things that and it confronts you. All your insecurities come up. You're not good enough. Your
Yeah.
history, your money, all your stuff comes up. This is what I help people resolve, because if they don't resolve that, I can teach you all the strategies, I can give you all the tools, I can give you the right programs, I can give you the VAs, I can give you all of the things. But if you have not resolved all of that, it won't work. You won't be able to implement it. Right. So it's a matter of understanding that you have to develop the muscle to be able to navigate these things that intimidate you, that scare you, while you're implementing a strategy, right? While you're implementing a plan. Because here's the other thing, I can't teach you that theoretically. I can't teach you how to ride a bike without you being on the bike
Yes.
and us, which is why the coaching process is so brilliant, because you're being coached while you're on the court, right? While you're doing the things. Because a lot of you, I'm going to say it now, hear me out. A lot of you are sitting there theorizing about how to have the life you want. You're sitting there reading all the books and having conversations and contemplating, but you're not getting in action. At the end of the day, the only thing that's going to make a difference is the action. That's the only thing that's going to teach you what's needed. Like the things that one of my favorite things is it's like just start. When I'm talking to entrepreneurs, they try to get everything perfect. They try to get the perfect website and the perfect logo and the perfect thing. I'm like, listen, that website and that logo is going to change in a year. It's going to change. It's not going to last you more than 2 years. Get going. Because the moment you start, you're going to start learning. The moment you're on the court, you're going to start getting information and feedback. You're going to start implementing. And those breakdowns that you have are going to be just as important, if not more important than the wins, because they're going to teach you. And that's another mindset, I think, that we have to start being in a relationship with our quote unquote failures, because we try to avoid them. And by avoiding them, we're actually avoiding the growth that comes from them. And we learn just as much, if not more, from the breakdowns and the failures than from the wins. I just gave you a lot. I just went on a rant.
And I was loving every second of it. What I drew, and I'm actually, I got to show this off. So if you're watching the video, I'm showing my notebook. This is like probably the best jet I've ever drawn. I mean, like that thing's pretty good for a little sketch. And it's showing a jet taking off. And what you were saying is you're getting coached when you're on the court, or you're building. To me, I was thinking about you're building the plane while you're taking off, because I know that some of our colleagues in the profession that I'll meet at a conference or whatever, they might say, wow, like you're doing so much on social media, or, how do you do group coaching? And I tell them pretty much exactly what you just said. I just started. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I know the pains of our target audience. So, business leaders, parents, people just trying to be adults with ADHD.
Yeah.
Like, I know those struggles, so I can talk about that. I don't need to have curriculum or anything. I just show up and talk about, hey, here's your pain. Here's some things that have worked for me. How can we make it work for you? And the other thing that I wrote down that I loved what you said is feelings or facts. So it's like looking at it in a neutral way. Like, okay, my ego might be bruised because that person said no to my sales offer or whatever. But the fact is that person didn't see value in it for enough value to pay that price or whatever. So what can you find? What value can you find in the fail? Find facts in the failure.
I wanna pull something out you just said, because what you're really pointing to when you started pointing to at the beginning was really it's another leadership distinction, which is authenticity. And I think that authenticity, when by you being authentic and you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just know that I have a vision, a commitment of making an impact with people that suffer the way that I've suffered. And I'm taking responsibility for that commitment by taking action, right? All leadership distinctions, right? And I'm going to be authentic about it and just go, I don't know, let's figure this out, right? Let's because one of my biggest moments when I started, I do a lot of public speaking. And when I first started, I would start to sweat and I would get so nervous and I would just start to completely, I mean, I don't have any hair. So when I'm sweating, it's just like dripping down my forehead.
Yeah.
People would get so concerned for me. They would like go run, get me towels. And one of the best things I started to do, I had this moment where I just started walking in front of the room. And I was just like, hi, my name is Gary Montalvo. I'm pretty nervous right now, so I'm probably going to start to sweat. I have a towel. Don't worry. When I start to sweat, I'm just going to Luther Vandross and I'm going to, pat myself off. And when I did that, two things happened. One, I was expecting, which was I was free.
Yes.
In that moment, I was free. I wasn't sitting there trying to pretend that I was anybody else. I wasn't sitting there trying to pretend, because that's what gets us in trouble. Like now I'm sitting there pretending that, oh no, I got this. I don't have ADHD. I got my hands all over this. Like I'm good, right? Like I'm like, No, you don't. You've got stuff going on, right? And
Yeah.
that's okay. You're a human being. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with having, human being stuff going on. So that was a huge moment for me. The second thing that I did not know was total surprise was the moment I did that, I had the room.
Yes.
The room was like, I'm with Gary. Like they all, oh Gary, no, you're doing great, and they start clapping, they're cheering. Immediately, they related to me, because who the heck cannot relate to having to be in front? It's one of the biggest fears in life, I think, is before death is
Yeah.
public speaking,
Yep.
right? So how that moment taught me that authenticity is so powerful. Now here's the thing, and the reason I'm going into this, because some of you use your authenticity as victimy.
Oh. Oh.
You use your authenticity as a way to get you off the hook, as a way to get sympathy, as a way to get, whatever you need to get in that moment to avoid what you're trying to avoid. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, I didn't go up in front of the room and say, "Hey guys, I'm really nervous. I don't want to do this right now." And I got off. No, I still went and did the scary thing,
Yes, exactly.
right? And I still kept doing the scary thing until that wasn't the case anymore, until I wasn't afraid anymore. Okay, but it's really important that you embrace your authenticity from a place of power, from a place of, like, tell your truth, because it gives other people permission to tell their truth. But it's not a reason. You're still responsible for what you're responsible for. You're still accountable. It doesn't Don't use it to get yourself off the hook for anything.
When you just shared that gem about sharing in an authentic and vulnerable way gives other people permission to do that same thing. And I believe that that is a huge reason that my content has done well on social media, is
Yes.
because I took the mask and all of the, like, I'm trying to put this front up, and I just threw it out the window. And there was a lot of times where I had to give myself a little pep talk before I would hit record and just say, I don't care anymore what people think. Whereas I used to be crippled by anxiety because I'm wondering, well, what if my boss sees me? Are they going to think I'm doing a good job? Now when you think about wanting to help people, a lot of the anxiety goes away. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, well, Gary and Ryan, there's no way I could get on stage. What I tell people is, and Gary, you know this from being in theater and working around that scene, is no one in an audience has ever sat there and thought, you know what? I really hope this person forgets their lines and just has a terrible time. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, of course. Well, that's how they feel about anyone who's presenting. They're watching the person because they're expecting to get value. So they want that person to be comfortable. And being able to make light of something that might have previously made us really self conscious. My mentor says, and this was very similar to what Gary said, like, vulnerability is power, where it's power because you're not trying to be better than other people. In fact, you're relating and connecting with them on a human level. And that's what I find. And I'm curious if this is what it's like for you, Gary. Like, that's what makes coaching different than, let's say, consulting, for example, is
Mm-hmm.
in consulting, when we get brought in that role into a workplace, they're expecting you're going to have the answers. Whereas
Yes.
in coaching, it's much more meeting the person where they are, figuring out what's important to them, and doing what you can to support them in the journey of figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah, in coaching, you don't really have to be a subject matter expert in whatever you're coaching, because you're just asking questions and you're just
Yeah.
having this person do the work of finding their answers. You're holding them accountable. You're mirroring things back to them so they see themselves in action. You're asking them questions. Was that a fact or is that an interpretation, right? When we're consulting, we're being brought in as subject matter experts, right? When I get brought in for consulting, similar to you, it's like, well, yeah, I have a cultural problem that I'm trying to shift.
Yeah.
I have a leader that I'm trying to develop. Like, those are different types of problems. But I've coached. One of my favorite clients to coach was a dance studio owner. I don't know anything about dance. I don't know anything, but we got her business growing 35%. So we
See,
did the
and that
thing.
I love that's such a perfect example because yes, coaches don't have to be the expert. We're the expert in helping you to tap into your inner expert as the client. And I love that you said finding answers to the questions. And that's what I know when I send people over to ADHD Online, that's what they're doing. Because
Hmm.
a lot of the times the answers are inside of us. We just need the prompting to get them out. And I
Yeah.
know, for example, with ADHD Online, when people are wondering, like, am I crazy? Well, you can take this online assessment with ADHD Online and figure it out. So, again, you all who are listening, if you know someone who's wondering, or if you are wondering, that sounds awfully familiar, you deserve to get answers. I had a client who got his diagnosis when he was 83 years old. He's now 88. And he
Oh
said, Ryan, these have
wow.
been 5 of the best years of my life because I finally understand myself. Make sure you put in Coach Ryan 50 for $50 off. So I want to ask Gary though, what are you consulting on? Because I think those of us with ADHD, people might be out there wondering, like, okay, I don't know what kind of job I should be doing. And not saying that you'll have the answers for them, but how did you figure out, like, okay, this is what I'm going to go talk to people about?
Yeah, I think in my own journey to creating myself as a leader, I became really passionate about leadership. For me, when everything that we've been talking about is leadership distinctions. I mean,
Yeah.
you just shared earlier about how when you are focused in being in service, that your fears and concerns evaporate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's contribution. That's another leadership distinction, right? Leaders are people that are in contribution and in service. And so once that light bulb went on for me, I just was like, okay, this is what I'm about. I'm gonna try to make as much of an impact on the planet as possible, with whatever time I have left. And to me, when people create themselves as leaders, you give them the tools to unlock whatever's inside of them. To once you've been trained in keeping your word, in creating a vision, in getting committed to that vision, and taking responsibility for the vision, and living a life of service, once you've been trained in those distinctions, like, the world is your oyster. Like, you can go on. I mean, that is what it takes to run a successful business. That is what it takes to run a successful nonprofit. That's what it takes to run a marathon. Like, those are the distinctions that are required for you to be successful in any area of your life. So once I put all those strings together, and with entrepreneurs, the reason I love working with entrepreneurs is because entrepreneurs are leaders. The fact that you're saying, okay, I'm going to go do this super risky thing. I'm going to go step out of the box and do this super risky, bold thing when all the odds are stacked against me,
Yeah.
when I have no evidence that I can do this. The contrary, I probably got people telling me, "What are you doing? You're crazy. Stay in your safe job." Like, these are people, like, they're badasses. They're badasses. And when you give them these tools, right? When I help them connect these dots, not only do they free them up in their business, but they don't keep it to themselves. Like, entrepreneurs, whatever they get, they share. They give it to their communities, they give it to their clients, they give it to, their families. So selfishly, I like working with entrepreneurs because it just makes my ripple effect bigger.
That's
Because when I
exactly the answer.
empower them, it just,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like, oh, there's another one. Like, the, the difference I made with you is like, you're gonna go touch 100 people now,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So I, in my private coaching, I work with a lot with entrepreneurs to connect these dots and make sure that they're, not operating in reaction in their business, and that they have these distinctions in place. When I go into work consulting with companies, I'm looking at, are these distinctions alive within your organization, right? Are people operating with, with responsibility, with commitment, with service, with vision? And if they're not, how do we put those in? Because they're all needed, right? When you have a team that's not committed, it doesn't work, right? When responsibility is missing, it doesn't work. When vision is missing, oh my God, you might as well, like, hate your life, right? When integrity is missing, it's chaos. So all of these things are needed in order for the environment to thrive, not just results wise, but like just the experience of going to work, right?
Yes.
The investment of going to work, of being in this organization. So, there's many ways that we do that. Sometimes it's training. Sometimes it's like, we have to look at policies. Sometimes it's, creating a different org chart and different processes to create some of this stuff. Sometimes you gotta, very often I get brought in and like, here, fix my team.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, okay. And within very few minutes, you realize, I'm like, nah, buddy, you got to work with you first.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
This is
exactly.
your child.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my rules is I don't work with any leader organization who's not invested in the process, part
Yeah,
of the process. Like, I'm
right.
like, no, this doesn't work. I'm not gonna go train them and then you go be the same way you've always been.
Yeah, to come
It
back in
doesn't.
and bring that venom, the
Yeah,
negative back into it.
exactly.
Well, speaking of the ripple effect, I said this at the beginning, but I'm grateful for being part of the ripple effect that you've had, and I would love people to know more about what you're doing. So, where can people find out more about Coach Gary?
Yeah, so my website is GaryMontalvo.com. You can also follow me on Instagram. It's just Gary at Gary Montalvo. I'm pretty easy to find. I also have a podcast. You should go listen to Ryan's episode on my show,
Yeah,
The Ownership Game.
the ownership
Um,
game. How
the
good is that?
ownership game.
Love that.
It was a very fun episode. And, Ryan, like, first of all, what's interesting about the episode was that I went looking for, this was a point where I was like, all right, I think I'm definitely ADHD, but what does this mean? And how do I navigate this? And so I went looking for who can I talk to about this and kind of use myself as a guinea pig in the process. And I wanted to say the story, Ryan, because, when you
Yeah,
mentioned why you've done so well, I do think it's because you're so authentic. But what it really stood out for me was that I just felt safe in your space. I felt like I wasn't you create this context of there's nothing wrong with us,
yes,
right? There's nothing wrong with us. We're brilliant and beautiful. And I just felt so safe with you. And I was like, okay, this is the guy that I want to bring to my community to talk
yeah.
about this, because the way that you just create such safety, I think is such a gift, and it makes you really special, and it definitely is oozing all over your social media content.
Thank you. I'm getting chills right now just hearing that. So I receive it. Thank you. And I'm honored. I always say this to my clients, but I say it to my friends too, is I'm honored to play any small part that I can in someone's journey. So
Yeah.
it was such a privilege for me, and I didn't even know. I mean, that was just me being authentically me. So yeah, yay me. But also to be able to provide that for you, because you're doing that already for all of your clients, to
Yeah.
just look at it from such a neutral lens. So that's one of my biggest takeaways from our conversation today is just authenticity. Like, life is too short for you to try to be someone you're not. And both Gary and I have learned from trying for years and decades to fit into a society that wasn't built for us sometimes, that it's way more fun and energizing when you just are yourself, because then you're not
Yeah.
wasting energy trying to be someone you're not. So I want to give you the chance, Gary. Is there Any other things that you'd want to say to the More Than ADHD community of listeners out there?
Being authentic is more than more fun. It's more than just fun. It's
Yeah.
actually more effective.
Yeah.
You will be far more effective in life when you fully embrace all of yourself. If you're trying to hide it, if you're trying to pretend, well, just think all the energy is going into pretending and hiding and avoiding. The moment that you're just authentic and you hold it and you go, this is me and it's awesome and I got some stuff to work on, you free up so much of the energy that was going into pretending and hiding and avoiding, and it just makes you more effective. It allows you to connect with people. I can go on and on and on and on, but it's not just about fun. It really
Yeah.
just will give your life more meaning and purpose.
And to wrap things up with some alliteration, it's not just about fun, but one of the notes that I had from our conversation is it's sometimes about failure, but failing forward to find the facts. And it's not just about the feelings, it's about getting results. Because when it comes down to it, results get respect.
Yeah.
So let's keep helping each other to get results. Gary, thank you so much for being one of our early guests on the More Than ADHD podcast. I'm so excited to see what 2025 holds for you and whatever we get to work on together.
Absolutely.
And to everyone who's listening, just know, as Gary said today, and I want to reinforce, you are beautiful, creative, resourceful, and whole. You're amazing just the way you are. ADHD doesn't define you, it's just part of you. And that's why you are more than ADHD. Make sure to share this with someone who you think would benefit from it, because sharing is caring. And look up Coach Gary with all the work he's doing on the ownership game and see if he can help or if I can help. We love you and have a great rest of the day.